that Jerry Goldsmith score, like one of the classic scores ever, composed in 9 days.
9 days, and also, when you think of noir, everyone who thinks of noir or kind of these femme fatale romances, doomed romances, it's always they always think of a sax. They always use a sax, but the chosen instrument was the trumpet.
Well, the trumpet, I think, is it sounds more mournful, which gives it a special quality. And I want to follow up on the depravity point about Chinatown. I'll bring on Dean for this. Hang on, let me bring on Dean. Got four lines open. Dean, the element of depravity in the film, which was the basis of the first question I asked him. I think when I watched it again, it really came through. And I think that's why Roman Polanski was a perfect director for it, because if any filmmaker knows and feels in his bones the depravity of people, it was him, particularly at that time. This was the first movie he directed after the murders, right? The Manson murders.
Second murder.
It was the second.
Macbeth was the
right.
first.
Right. But this was the first time he returned, and the only time he returned to California to make another movie.
That's exactly right. I mean, I just want to interject here. I think that Chinatown is Polanski's kind of commentary on what he had learned about Los Angeles from living in Los Angeles as an outsider, having lived through so much depravity in Europe. It was really him commenting on how the depravity in Europe that was so famous, that he had lived through, that was so like world famous. And I use the word famous like in a very weird way, but it was his commentary on how the depravity in L.A. was so much connected to what went on in Europe at the time, where he was obviously a kind of a victim of what went on there.
But I mean it goes to the kind of the heart of greed and the heart of human nature, which also spoke, going back to the second question I asked, it also speaks to what we're learning about our government at the time, and what many other movies.
I've always said Chinatown. I mean, I love All the President's Men. I mean, don't get me wrong, but I've always said Chinatown is actually the best film about Watergate. Without being quote unquote about Watergate.
Right. Which does make it the best, because it's not quite about Watergate, but it is.
But I mean, it deals in that. And that's the thing about the character of Giddys. Giddys has seen corruption and bad things. And, he left Chinatown because of that. So he has seen bad things. But what Chinatown shows in the movie, and what we learned from that time, in the Watergate era, is that things can be worse than we even think.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Giddys learned.
Actually, as a concept, that's what Chinatown represents.
Yeah.
The setting of Chinatown, that's kind of what it represents to him. And the whole inspiration for that, I've read in previous interviews with Robert Towne, was he happened upon a vice cop, like a detective or something, that worked Chinatown. Mm-hmm. And he says, well, what do you do? And he says, as little as possible, because in that area you don't know if you're preventing a crime or helping to commit one. Mm-hmm. So you do as little as possible. And it's that kind of feeling of helplessness that gives the film this tragic resonance.
Well, I have to say, Chinatown actually represents like our relationship with what went on in Europe at the time of the Holocaust and the time of the Nazis and everything, it really actually tries to let us know, us meaning people in America, that is USA, let us know what went on there. You know, I think it tries to let us know, you know, how we were fooled. You know, just as a lot of the German people were fooled, and a lot of the Jewish people were fooled, and a lot of the people just in Europe were fooled.
Have you been listening to our show on The Shining?
Yeah, really.
I mean,
all this conspiracy. No, I think that Polanski, just by the basis of who he is and where he comes from, he could pull that. He can mine that kind of stuff in anything he does.
Exactly.
But I mean, it's also known as a quintessential LA movie.
LA movie, and it's also and you know that trumpet. You know, you were saying it's very mournful, and it is. The trumpet score is very mournful, but it's also the movie and the score is actually one of the most romantic.
It gets it all.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
I would consider the Jerry Goldsmith score to be like one of the top 10 scores of all time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I would agree with that.
And it's a top 5 Goldsmith. I mean, it's just below First Blood.
Actually, I forget who the original composer of that was, but they screened the movie. Polanski didn't really have a problem with the music for it, but they screened the movie, and someone that Polanski really admired came up to him and said, "The movie's brilliant, but the score's a loser. You got to dump that score." And so he was going out of the country, so he just imparted the word, you know, find another composer, record another score quick. And actually, Robert Towne sat in on the recording sessions with Goldsmith for that.
Boy, that must have helped a lot. I mean,
oh gosh,
has there ever been? Is there ever any kind of reports of any other like a film writer that has sat in on a scoring, a scoring session?
Well,
for a movie?
that's what I was saying about the close collaboration that they had. I mean, he was kind of joined at the hip at that production of Chinatown. He was joined at the hip with Nicholson through Last Detail, I'm sure, and I know for a fact with Warren Beatty on Shampoo. I mean, there wasn't this kind of you write it and then you go away. I mean, he was an active collaborator throughout the entire process, and the film's only benefited from that.
Yeah, I mean, after this is Last Detail 73, which is Robert Towne. 74 is Chinatown. 75 is Shampoo. Actually, I think Shampoo is 76. And it's interesting. But then Towne kind of takes a break, and I guess he was really working on his directorial projects. And he would come out and. Of course he worked on Missouri Breaks and Heaven Can Wait uncredited, but then he went into, you're right, he went into Personal Best, which came out in 82, which was his directorial thing. And his dream project, his dream screenplay that he wrote, but it got taken away from him in the studio system, is the Greystoke project.
He says that's the most heartbreaking event of his life.
Mm. And even when he was nominated for an Oscar, when he was nominated for an Oscar for actually adapting that screenplay, he actually gave the Oscar nomination name to his dog, which was P.H. Batsack. So I mean, it was obviously great work, but he gave that credit over because he didn't feel connected to it somehow.
I don't think he's even seen it.
He hasn't seen it. It was one of those deals. I mean, the director Hugh Hudson, basically, when you win an Oscar, and he had, he didn't win Best Director, but he had the Best Picture winner, which was Chariots of Fire.
Right.
Basically, when you do that, you can call the shots for your follow-up film. and they will give you the world. And he wanted to do Greystoke, and he kind of took it over and did the rewrite, and
And that's actually such a great that's quite a great compliment to Towne's screenplay for Greystoke. That Hudson wanted to do this screenplay.
One of the people in the chat room said, "You guys are hardcore geeking tonight."
Yeah,
I guess we're getting ultra geeky with our.
It's interesting to know.
Yeah. Well, as we should. We're Movie Geeks United. We need to do it.
It's interesting to note. I know that in the review of Greystoke by Pauline Kael, she actually talks about how she read Towne's original draft and said it was a very elegant piece of writing that before Hudson did the rewrites and so forth. And obviously Towne hasn't seen. He has, and I don't think he will. And he has every right not to want to see it. But it is actually an interesting film. And Ralph Richardson posthumously got
a great last performance.
Yeah, Jerry,
performance.
You do love that movie, don't you?
I think it's a good movie. It's a hard thing to see. This is a hard thing. It's hard to. I would love to read his draft to see what he did, because there's so many different things you can do with Tarzan. You can make it into what they did. It is a very costume period piece like that. You can modernize it. You can make it very sci-fi, fantasy, because that's what a lot of the books are after the first one. There's so many different directions you can go. I'd love to read his original screenplay.
Yeah, and
that said, though, with Greystoke, though, I just have to say, with Greystoke, they did it completely correctly. They did it completely correctly. I don't know what went on behind the scenes or whatever, but with Greystoke, they did it completely correctly. That is a reboot. That is one of the King reboots of all time, I think.
Well, I think it's a good movie, but I would just love to read. Yeah. What I've always wanted to know about the film, though, is why I do like the film. Remember, the film is a disappointment. It is I will say something. We saw that in the theaters, and someone brought young kids to that movie. And, the first half of that movie with the apes and everything, for little kids, it was very scary. They couldn't stop crying. I'll never forget that. But it's a very interesting film. But I would just love to read because I've always wanted to know what was his version, what was his take on it.
Yeah, well, he knows what it could have been, and that's what pains him.
And
of course,
it's interesting.
I think we all would be in the same position.
Yeah. It's interesting to note that the year Greystoke came out also is the year that Phil Collins was nominated for his song for Against All Odds. And
then he does the music for Tarzan the Animated.
Yes.
Very good. Very good tie-in.
What does it say, though, about...
That's good, Aaron.
What does it say, though? That animated Tarzan, I think, is the most popular version of the cinematic version.
Well,
and when you think Tarzan, you think Phil Collins, right?
I always think Phil Collins.
That is what a lot of kids now connect to Tarzan. But I think Greystoke is an amazingly elegant.
I'm not going to argue with you there.
Surprising. It is obviously surprising. You would never expect to go to a Tarzan movie to see what you see in Greystoke.
No, isn't Andie MacDowell's performance completely dubbed?
Oh yeah,
that's
Glenn Close, right?
Glenn Close. Yeah.
And they dubbed the wrong voice. They needed to dub Christopher Lambert's voice.
How many words of dialogue does he say? Let me ask you a question. How much? What is it, like a page of dialogue for Christopher Lambert?
Yes, and that's a page too much.
Obviously in future film, I would have to agree with you, Aaron. In future films, though, I think Greystoke, maybe, I still think that's his best performance because it's the least he's ever spoken on screen.
I have to say about with Andie MacDowell, though, it's really a shame that I think that she was denigrated a lot in the 80s for being the performance in that movie that got completely dubbed. But she's a wonderful actress unto herself, and she proved that with Sex Lies.
Yeah, 5 years later. Yeah.
All right.
All right. Enough about Greystoke.
All right. Me, Jamie. You, Movie Geeks. Let me ask you one more point about Chinatown. Let me bring this up. It is said that this is Jack Nicholson's first adult performance, and this led the way. This led the way for stuff like The Last Detail and like another chapter in his career. Chinatown did.
I mean, it is his first adult performance, because if you do think of, I mean, if you do think of all the films that he'd done before then, I mean, the legitimate Nicholson performance. I'm not talking about, the Corman stuff. But from Easy Rider to 5 Easy Pieces to Carnal Knowledge to Marvin Gardens and Last Detail, those are all the key films of that, in Little Shop of Horrors even. He is playing very immature, Arrested Development type males. That's what he could do. He had a knack for playing kind of frustrated young males of that era. And Jake Gittes is in Chinatown. He's the first pretty much grown up, responsible, well-adjusted character Nicholson plays.
Well, can I interject here? I think that he's fully an adult in Easy Rider and in 5 Easy Pieces. He's not a completely formed adult, but he is an adult. He's an adult
in that he's over 18, but I mean.
I have to agree with about Chinatown.
I'm saying that he's an adult in that he makes his own choices and he lives with them and dies with them.
He makes the choices.
Wait a minute. He particularly in Easy Rider, he makes his choices and he lives and dies with them. And the same thing goes with 5 Easy Pieces. He lives and he suffers with all the choices that he makes. Now, with Chinatown, it's the first performance where he actually makes his choices and lives with them and owns them completely. But that doesn't make the other pieces, which I really feel like Easy Rider is his first adult performance, really. I mean, even though he had been playing adults all into, like, even The Terror, for instance. I mean, back in 1964 or whatever it is.
I do think that's his most adult performance, The Terror. I do.
I mean, but even in The Terror, he was an adult in that movie. I mean, he was over 18. He was a blah, 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 on and on like that. But really, really, I think, if you were just going to be very frank about it, you have to, like, give 5 Easy Pieces as being his
but I think Easy Rider and 5 Easy Pieces represent a kind of youthful counterculture attitude that Chinatown broke.
And an immaturity. He makes these choices in those films, Easy Rider and 5 Easy Pieces, but they're the choices of immature adolescence. In Carnal Knowledge, he is truly not an adult. I mean, he's an adult male.
That's very true. That's what I was thinking of, actually, Carnal Knowledge.
And King of
I agree about Carnal Knowledge. He is totally like in his childhood kind of.
And there's
I want things.
There's a little tentiveness of adulthood in King of Marvin Gardens, but he's unwilling to stand up to his reckless brother, and he pays a consequence for that. And same thing with the Drive, he said, and what's the other the Henry Jaglom film that he did?
Safe Place. Is that what he did? Yeah.
The Safe Place.
Yeah.
And even in Last Detail, Otis Young is the mature one.
Right.
Well, the thing about Chinatown, though, I have to put this forth. The thing about Chinatown is that the Jake Gittes as a character is not faced with the kinds of disappointments that the characters in Easy Rider and 5 Easy Pieces are faced with. He's faced with his main disappointment at the very end of the movie. And we don't get to see how he is as a character the rest of the time. The movie ends and he is faced with Jack Giddies is faced with his most adult kind of confrontation at the very end of the movie. And so we can't really say whether that's his most adult performance or not, because we don't know what Jake Giddies goes through at the end, after the end of the movie. I mean, he is really faced with.
Yeah, but we don't we know that there is something haunting about Chinatown, something unresolved for him that he's not anxious to get back to.
Well, I
return to.
I really feel like the end of Chinatown is the end of innocence for that character. I mean, I think that character is playing at being an adult throughout the entire movie, but is actually faced with adulthood at the end of it, and I think that's what makes the movie resonate.
Well, and then we do know what happens, because if you watch The Two Jakes, he's married, he's successful, he has a membership to a country club. So he does. He does.
Yeah, but you got to know that the Two Jakes, as well as I do, the Two Jakes didn't appear until the 90s. So as far as 1974 audiences were concerned, the Two Jakes didn't exist. So we do that as 20/20 hindsight now, but really, Chinatown is about somebody graduating into adulthood. And if you really want to be quite honest about it, maybe One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is actually his first adult movie.
Well, that's a year later.
Yeah.
And,
well, let me say this, and I've said it before. And I've said it before on the show with you guys. When I think of the 70s, I think the in terms of American artists, I think his was the defining career of that decade.
Oh, for sure.
Nicholson
He's
played
the actor of the decade.
Yeah, played so many roles that were representative of the male in that time. And we don't really have that anymore. We can't look to a representative of, what are we today? We don't know what we are today.
Name somebody who is Jack Nicholson's counterpart today.
Yeah.
That's true. That's very true.
Yeah.
George Clooney. I'm not.
Maybe.
I'm not joking in that, Clooney in his best roles, Michael Clayton, Descendants, Up in the Air, those roles, Out of Sight. He is the closest thing we have to carrying on that Nicholson-like coolness, but also being able to deconstruct it at the same time.
Right.
Yeah, but
I would throw the American in there.
But the key words there, I'm sorry, but the key words there is the closest that we can hope for.
Yeah.
It is not quite. Clooney is great, no question about it. He is a movie star, no question about it. He is right up there with the top of the top right now. But he is not stretching himself enough, I believe. I feel like Clooney is just kind of like repeating some things, and I wish that Clooney would stretch more. I mean, I wish that I could see a performance from Clooney like I saw from Nicholson from Cuckoo's Nest.
Well, geez, I wish there could be movies like.
Yeah, I mean,
that's like saying I wish I could see another Godfather. I mean,
that's the point.
Where is it?
That's the point, really. I mean, Nicholson wouldn't have had the career that he did and represent what he did unless the material existed for him. And that was a period of time when it did.
And the thing is about...
That's totally correct. You're totally right.
I love Cuckoo's Nest, but Cuckoo's Nest, if you really want to get cold analytical about it, Cuckoo's Nest is a film of Nicholson's performance enhancing the material as opposed to, you know, this is a great script. Whoever plays this is going to be is going to have the role of a lifetime. That's not the case because Kirk Douglas was too old to play that role, even though he originated it. So
he wanted it.
You know, Cuckoo's Nest is a great film, but it's a great film because of Nicholson. It's not a great film because that is a peerless screenplay. I mean,
I don't agree. I mean, I think that's a peerless movie, like on all. And I don't agree with that. I believe that the direction, the sporting performances, everything to go with Cuckoo's Nest is perfect. I
think outside of Nicholson, and Cuckoo's Nest is, you know, I'm making a list of my top favorite movies of the 70s, and I might as well say now Cuckoo's Nest is my number one.
Yeah.
And I think what makes Cuckoo's Nest so extraordinary, beyond Nicholson, is the direction and the smart move of living in that space, and it's unavoidable, intangible kind of feeling of authenticity and
and not just the space, just not just like inhabiting that space, which was in Oregon or whatever, you know, not just inhabiting that space of that hospital, but also like casting every single performance right down to the people who were right in the background who never had a line in that movie, didn't have a line in that movie.
But aren't those
they
real
were
wackos?
Just perfect.
Weren't those real wackos that they were using?
Some of them were.
No, they were all actors.
No. The extra. Some of the extras were actually patients.
Oh, okay, but I mean,
they were mixed in together. I mean, they were living on the floor with the patients all the way through it. That's what I'm saying. That's the feeling that
it actually points out the fact that we cannot tell who are the actors and who are the real wackos in that movie.
Well, see,
we can't tell.
Milos Forman's directing coupled with Nicholson's performance would make that film. But, you know, that is not Bo Goldman's top screenplay. I mean, it's a good piece of writing, but if you just took it as a written 120 pages, that is not one of those scripts you're going to study in class. I mean, Bo Goldman's, his Melvin and Howard screenplay is far more elegant than the Cuckoo's Nest screenplay.
I personally don't feel that many screenplays should be studied in classes, because I believe that the greatest screenplays should be done out of your heart and not studied as, we're going to be here at 30 pages and we're going to be here at 60 pages, we're going to be here at 80 pages and here at 120 pages.
But you do need to know how to structure a story, because if you don't, then you get something like, we don't know, we need to talk about Kevin. But
Jamie
can attest to this because
hang on.
Jamie can attest to this because that's the other thing. Cuckoo's Nest is not a screenplay first. I mean, it was a book first, then a play, and so it has different permutations.
Mm-hmm. I will say, the play is clunky. And the screenplay is a vast improvement over the play.
It is. That's correct. And as a book towards the screenplay, towards the movie, it actually doesn't have much connection to like from the book to the screenplay. But from the screenplay, you get what the book is trying to do. That's why the movie is actually kind of a vast improvement over the book, and actually lets you know more about what the book is trying to do than what the book is trying to,
Jamie, will you agree with me on one thing about the film? I love the film. One of my favorite films. But the overt Freudianness of the whole thing, of the final scene involving Billy, is a little obvious.
I don't feel that way. I just don't feel that way. I feel that is a movie that does exactly what it wants to do, and it knows exactly where its audiences are at the moment that it wants to do it. And I think that it is almost, well, actually, it's a perfect movie.
What elements of the Freudian thing are you talking about? The suicide?
The fact that basically, Billy has a stutter and is shy and cannot talk, basically. So McMurphy arranges for him to sleep with a girl, and so the next morning when he's caught by Nurse Ratched, we can tell in the film his stutter has gone away and all this other stuff. I mean, it's a...
Well, I guarantee you, dude, as soon as you get laid, you wonnst stutter anymore.
But I'm talking... I understand the obviousness of it, but you have to admit it's a little on the nose.
I won't admit it. It's perfect. It does it completely correctly.
And then we get this last thing, the thing where we find out 2 hours into the film that Nurse Ratched knew Billy's mother. We did not know up until that point.
Well, no,
that's not true at all.
She lets us know, very early on. The Nurse Ratched lets us know very early on in the movie that I knew your mother and blah, 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 and all that stuff.
Not in the movie.
Yes, she does.
I understand the Freudian thing going on there, and I understand all that stuff, but it works. It doesn't matter if you can find out. It doesn't matter if you can figure out the tricks. It doesn't matter because the movie works. It doesn't matter. The movie works completely 100% correctly, and it is perfectly done visually, by editing, by direction, by writing. Everything is perfect in that movie. It's perfect. No question about it.
I have nothing against the film as a piece of directing or acting. I'm just saying that year did not deserve to win Best Adapted Screenplay.
I don't know, because if you're trying to adapt that screenplay from a play that wasn't really that good, because I've read the play too, like you have, Jamie.
I performed the
play. You performed the play. I know.
I was McMurphy.
Yeah. And if you know the play and you know the book, then you know that movie is a perfect adaptation of both of those things, because it improves on both of them.
And the thing, I mean, the complaint that many people lodged about it, critics at the time that did complain about it, complained about heavy-handed symbolism. I mean, and that's present. I mean, there's something in there that McMurphy can be kind of like construed as a Christ figure and that kind of thing. And some people took issue with that. Some people,
and of course, the noble Indian who, learns his message and all this stuff. But that stuff I didn't mind. That stuff I didn't mind, because I don't think it's as on the nose as some of the other things. And as far as adapted screenplays, you want to talk about turning something, junk into gold. Jaws or Dog Day Afternoon are far better screenplays, particularly Dog Day Afternoon. Dog Day Afternoon is a better piece of writing than Cuckoo's Nest.
Well, I mean, we have to admit that was a very tough year. I mean, with Dog Day Afternoon and everything, Dog Day Afternoon actually, that won Best Adapted Screenplay of that year, right?
No, it was Cuckoo's Nest.
Okay. Well, with Dog Day Afternoon, I mean, what are you gonna say? I mean, that's a great. I mean, that just speaks to the time of the 70s, in which there was so much great shit that you couldn't possibly pick. What's the best?
And there was lots of great shit in the 60s too, and that produced. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a ridiculously rich time.
Thank you, Jerry. I have a fan. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that was great.
It was a ridiculously rich time for movies. I mean, nowadays it's kind of easy to pick like what's the best and what's not, what's going to be the best. Well, whatever it is, like it doesn't even matter what's the best. But
let me say, Dog Day wasn't adapted. Dog Day was an original screenplay, and it did win the Oscar for that.
It won original screenplay. I knew that was the case. It won original screenplay, and Once Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest won adapted.